Yes, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Variety Hour. And in the spirit of Russian football, we have a live bear in the studio, and it is in no ways cruel or unusual. It's what the Brisbane Lions wanted to do with a lion, and in Russia, they've done it. And joining me, not the bear, Danny McGinlay.
Hello. Oh, get off me, bear. Wait, settle down.
Don't look at its eyes.
Is that it? Oh, no, you can smell the Ukrainian on me.
Oh, that's right. They're not...
It's trying to steal my land.
Gee, got political fast.
Yeah, I do that.
Now, we should mention we're both finishing off our comedy festival in Melbourne runs.
Yeah, 4 shows to go for both of us.
Yeah.
And then you're doing Sydney Comedy Festival the very next week.
Yes, and
I'm the week after.
And you're the week after. How many nights are you doing?
Just 2. The Saturday, Sunday at the Enmore Theatre. It's called the Wild Oats Bar or something. Just go to the Enmore Theatre.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah,
I'm doing the Factory.
Oh, the Factory's cool.
I've done there before, so I think I've got 4 nights up there. So
there's a pub around the corner from the Factory Theatre where I watched the A-League Grand Final when Melbourne beat Sydney.
Yeah.
And I just walked in. It's just wall-to-wall light blue shirts.
Yeah.
And thankfully there was a table of Wanderers fans who were clearly wanting to cause some trouble. And I just went over to them and I went, "Hey guys, I'm a Victory fan. Can I sit with you?" And they go, "Of course, brother. Of course, mate. You sit with us." So they would have just thought I was a dickhead Wanderers fan.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, it should be fun. The Melbourne one. So my Melbourne shows, I've got 4 more to go. They're all sold out. So
all right, mate. So come to my show, people.
So go to Danny's.
Damn bigger venue.
Yeah, that's right. Mine sold out. It's literally in a phone box.
You went to do the show.
If I go in, it's sold out. But thank you, everyone who's come. I've had a ball doing it, and looking forward to taking it up to Sydney and see everyone up there. And are
you in talks to do it anywhere else?
I'm doing another tour later in the year at other places. I'm going down to Hobart. I'm trying to work out if I can jam in a few other places as well.
You can.
But it's where the people get a bit tired of me coming twice.
Yeah. Maybe we could come do a live podcast.
I would like to do some live podcasts.
Yeah, I'll come with you. We'll do some gigs around it. That'll work.
Done.
All right. Let's have that meeting off air.
We'll have it now.
All right.
I think
it's just finished.
We should have all our meetings. We should do all our admin on air. People would love that. People just love that.
What is your ABN?
I'll give out my tax file number. What's your PIN? We should mention also thank you to all the supporters who support this show. And we've also got anything else to plug? You got any other shows after Sydney?
Yeah, I can just announce I'm doing a couple of gigs in Perth in July, just before the Dogs play the Eagles over there. So if you're a Dogs fan in Perth...
Where are you doing that?
Comedy Lounge.
That's
the brand new one.
The brand new venue.
Yeah. And I think there'll also be another show at Frio's Little Creatures. So even if you're not a Dogs fan,
at the brewery.
Just come watch. At the brewery, yeah, they do one every
Do
Sunday
they
night
know
there.
you're doing it, or are you just going to stand up in the room just start doing your show?
And they're just so used to drunk idiots getting up and talking that they just give you a mic now. It's great.
We should just begin by acknowledging Darrell Eastlake, the famous commentator who anyone who grew up, especially in the 80s, would know, passed away this morning.
God rest him.
He was the voice of State of Origin, but also he did weightlifting, he did, you name it, he'd done every sport.
He was early days with the Swans up there.
He'd done a range of interesting jobs, like I was reading up this morning. So he'd done all sorts of jobs before he got into it. He kind of started just doing some sports reporting and then took off. And he was, for people who'd never heard him, he just got overly excited.
He was the BT of his
era. But unlike BT, I found him endearing. And he was really like, very excitable and really had that big booming...
Yeah, like a rabbit's warren of his time.
How's that? He was... And there was a great story Ken Sutcliffe told, because he was a very big part of the wide world of sports era in 80s and 90s.
I'll be honest, because I'm a bit younger than you, I mostly learned about him from listening to 12th Man
Well, that
albums.
was the other thing. The 12th Man was famously...
What's he going to do now? He's lost Richie. He's lost
everyone,
Tony.
basically.
Yeah, what Billy, if you're listening...
And the recent Channel 9 cricket commentary team were more of a parody of real cricket commentary.
Yeah, he's got nothing to work with.
Than he ever was. So there you go. Ken Sutcliffe said Darrell used to get into a fever pitch very early in a game And he gets so excited that their executive producer, David Hill, who actually went over to America and did a lot of the Fox Sports stuff over there with the NFL, used to stand behind Darrell in the broadcasting box at Lang Park during State of Origin and hit him with a rolled up Courier Mail whenever he got too excited.
That's good. You don't want to use a newspaper with too many facts.
No, that's right.
You don't want to hit him with, you don't want a grown up newspaper. You don't want like the Wall Street Journal whacking you there. You want a good Queensland based tabloid.
It does. You do feel old when the sort of the voices of your childhood pass away, don't you? It's it's a sad thing.
I noticed Bruce is looking not as crisp as he used to.
Well, he's had, like we all know, he's had the health problems and he's been the voice of just not so many moments, and the Olympic moments I think always make you a huge.
I read people online who don't like Bruce. How can you not like Bruce? It's like
shocking.
I just don't get that.
I think people start to like him more as they see who's following him. He's done it. He's a pretty great commentator. We should also mention.
Are we also mentioning Barbara Bush dying? Are we doing all the?
Oh, should we? Did she do much league? I don't remember her doing a lot of league.
She was a key what's that? Negotiator between the Super League wars.
Right.
She was responsible for Melbourne Storm existing. A lot of people don't know that.
Not the Iraq War, the Super League War. That's where I always get them confused. Those wars sort of blend into each other in my mind. So we wish Darrell Eastlake's family all the best. I know he's had a very tough time. He had Alzheimer's and had been living in a nursing home for a long time. So he passed away at 75 and he hadn't had a good trot the last few years. So I think it's been very tough on his family. I
read a quote from his wife that he was worried that he'd been forgotten and stuff. And
certainly not forgotten.
No, absolutely, yeah. Darrell, if you're wasting your afterlife listening to podcasts,
do you think that's what the afterlife is? Just
if he's been bad, he has to listen to this podcast.
You get your choice of podcasts. We wish his family the very best, and it's a sad story, but in some ways he's had a very tough final few years. In other news, shock horror. You'll be surprised, but you're plugged into this. I'm sure you probably were one of the lawyers in the room.
I was.
Katie Brennan, who we all know was suspended for the AFLW Grand Final.
Outrageous.
Was threatening to go to the Human Rights Commission.
Yeah.
I think that should be where all tribunal decisions end up. She and the AFL have basically come to well, really, the AFL didn't want to go through the whole Human Rights Commission.
Funny that. That's a wolf you want to keep at the door.
That's right.
For the AFL, in the gate.
Although I do think, the Human Rights Commission, of all the things that, as much as I realise football is the most important thing in the world, of all the things they've got on their plate, the idea that this would take up their time.
Yeah, you got Manus Island.
Yeah, I'm not saying this isn't even a worthy thing because it's about, discrimination between men and women, and that is a human rights violation. Absolutely. So I'm not trying to say, to belittle the actual idea, but
it's a first world human rights violation.
But when you look at all the things going on in the world, you kind of go, there's a lot of stuff going on.
And I find it funny
I guess what I'm saying is this could have been sorted as it has been sorted.
Well, actually, they could have just done, what they did for Trent Cotchin, just let her play the grand final.
That's right, they should have done that.
It's clear, it's an unwritten rule that it's a different week in grand final week. Barry Hall,
and she's a star.
That. She is.
So she should have got left. How she got suspended
didn't affect the game. Bulldogs still won.
Yeah.
So,
so
a lot of the journalists are saying, she won the war but lost the battle. I'm pretty sure she would have rather played in the grand final.
Yeah. Because it was a great battle. I loved, with Anzac Day coming up, I do love the war and sport analogies because next week those same journalists will be writing, don't compare war and sport ever. So the AFL basically sat down and said, look, we know that hasn't... I'm going to say something. I'm glad you're sitting. I actually don't blame the AFL for this because the AFL sat down with the AFLPA, Players Association, and they hurried getting the AFL Women's League up because Gillan brought it forward 2 years.
Yeah.
And he said in doing that, they were rushing a lot of things, but he thought it had already taken too long. And him rushing it forward, I think, is one of the... When we look back at the McLaughlin era, it'll be one of the key bits he can hang his hat on.
Yeah.
And bringing that forward.
It's been a big success.
So in doing that, they had to rush a lot of stuff. Now, one of the things they rushed around this is in agreeing to the penalties with the AFL Players Association. Both sides, the AFL and the AFL Players Association, said we don't want to have do the fines to women like we do with the men, because the women are not being paid anywhere near what the men are.
Yeah, but why didn't they pro-rata it?
Well, I don't know, but I think that the idea was just let's avoid fines altogether, because they're getting a lot of them are already giving up time at work and things.
I would have liked it if they pro-rated it and
you got $50 fine. Yeah.
Katie Brennan has been fined
$25. Well, I think that was the problem. The money, while relative, would have been so small. And so they just said, and I think the AFL Players Association were quite keen not to have the fine. So it's not that the AFL solely just decided to set up a bad system. I think they just, in the rush of it, it wasn't as well thought through, the unintended consequences. And
so you don't blame the AFL for doing it badly?
I don't fully blame them. I think they were at least trying to, in this case, do the right thing.
Your bureaucrat past is showing here, Titus.
No, do you think it's like I'm an apologist for
You are.
Also, I'd like to thank the AFL for slipping me $50 for this segment.
or if you will, 3 times the average AFLW's weekly pay packet.
But so it looks like they're going to sit down, and they've said that they're now going to work with players in the AFLPA, including Brennan. They've agreed if she drops her basically Human Rights Commission thing, they'll sit down and work out a new penalty regime with her as part of the consultation group, and she seems very happy with that. So to me, this is common sense prevailing, which is we don't often get to say in this context.
No, but why didn't the Bulldogs argue this in grand final week?
Well, I think it was set then, and you can't go, and they didn't want it.
Kick up a bit.
This is what it sets a precedent they don't want to set. The AFL don't want to set.
They've already done it with the men.
They have. Well, they didn't. That was when outside of the AFL's system, which is what the AFL never want to happen. Why they always want. It's why the Essendon saga got out of their hands, because when Asada appealed it to WADA, they lost all control. Because remember, the AFL Tribunal cleared them. The Essendon players.
Did they?
Yeah. and the AFL was so keen to not let it leave their jurisdiction. They always are. Because
it's like Star Wars. There's just another episode coming out, and I can't keep up of what happened when. And who was the Emperor? Was it James Hird? Was it Thompson?
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other episode. So we should. So that seems to all be that. The one thing they've also done is she got a 2-week ban, and they've scrapped that second week, which was going to mean she'd miss round 1. So they actually have repealed part of her sentence, so she's now actually going to be able to play in round 1 next year.
I'm sure she will be so stoked to play.
That more than makes up for missing a grand final premiership.
When she's playing in Canberra against the Giants, she will go, this is as good as a grand final.
So good on Katie for winning that fight, because I think that...
but also handling it so well. She could have thrown a lot of big tantrum.
A lot of shade.
Yeah, thrown a lot of shade, because she was in the right, but... Oh, no, she handled it like a
now she's
champion.
A political hero.
She is.
So you don't get to do that every day.
She's a civil rights awesomeness.
We spoke at the front, actually, about commentators, and BT has been on the charge this week. He was talking about Sean Higgins from North Melbourne is considering missing his club's round 5 fixture against Hawthorn, so he's only missing a loss, to be present for the birth of his child. But Brian Taylor says that he should be prioritising his football above it. So BT's decided, hey, this is an issue I should wade into. Who do we most need to get their thoughts on this? Let's get BT.
Childbirth advice from Brian Taylor. What an age we live in.
That's
this
right.
is so exciting.
I'm waiting for him to get a Channel 7 show where he can give parenting tips.
This is also like Sean Higgins getting Senate clearance advice from Dawn French.
Yeah, don't you love unsolicited birth advice? I think there's nothing more that women like than a man wading in to give his advice on how your birth should run.
And what was his suggestion? His suggestion
he suggested a few things. He said that because it's not due to next week, the baby, so his match is on Sunday.
Okay.
So the odds of it actually occurring on the day are not super high.
Something like 3% of all births.
they always well, most
on the
come,
due date.
Most come late. So especially if it's his, I don't know.
First children are always late. Second children are earlier. Once the womb has to work out what to do.
Ah, right. It's like being a rookie womb as opposed to a
proven womb.
Had 100 games. Right. Okay. Great. I'm sure that a lot of women are listening to this going, these two are the biggest morons I've ever listened to.
Proven womb was the term that our doctor used for my wife's...
Proven womb?
Proven, because he said, you've had a child, you've got a proven womb, it'll come early this time.
Is that really what he said?
Yeah. So it's like, it was a she, sorry, it was a she. She said proven womb. And that's why, so it's like it played 100 games, which is why the second child burst through it like a banner.
It's done enough pre-sale. Had you written something on it?
I had.
That's actually how you became the banner man. So is there proven? I wish I was suddenly 16 and starting a punk rock band because that's the name of it.
Well, you
right
can call
there.
your next comedy festival show that.
Proven womb. Yeah. Oh God.
So what did BT's solutions?
So BT said
BT's advice.
Well, Higgins said the priority for him is the baby, right, and that comes first.
What a hack!
And let's be honest, he's not missing a grand final. He's missing North play Hawthorn. So he said it was.
I think there'd be a few players just going, I just really want to support Sean on this.
They're all going to go watch. So Brian Taylor said that he should Skype it. Just Skype it up and you won't miss a trick. And there's no great reason to miss the big day.
Hang on.
I think I should say he's being a bit tongue-in-cheeky where he says you can invite people around to watch the Skype. So to give him the benefit of the doubt, I assume he's being partially silly about this.
Skype I know footballers love sharing pictures of their partner's vaginas. That's probably too far.
Yeah, that's right.
So what? Hang on. So Sean Higgins is there playing for North. Is it at the MCG? Or does it just wherever you're picturing it? Yeah. And what? So they set up like
put it on the big screen while he's playing. That way you can do both.
That'll distract him. That'll distract all the players.
Distract everyone a bit. So BT also said he went to all of his. They knew when it was day, and he says that you can just get them induced to avoid this issue.
I mean, that is
now,
accurate.
I'm not sure if inducing is something you do just for convenience. I know,
I would like this baby to arrive between 12 and 2 on a Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, that's right. So
you can't even get tradesmen to show up at that time. How are you going to get babies to do it?
I would love to see a segment on Channel 7 where like BT and Wayne, Carey and that give their advice. Women can write in with
so it's like Dr. Carl.
Birth plan questions. Get those two to answer.
Has he got any other solutions? So you Skype it and you just
and induce the baby. Skype it and induce it.
Skype
or
and induce
it. So do one or the other. That makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, but it's so daft. What was this on? This was on radio that he said this.
Yes.
Right. So clearly it's a slow news week.
Huge news. This is the top story. I almost had it at the top. Now, Tasmanian football, which does exist, I should add.
Yeah, I know. Martin Flanagan tells us.
Despite the AFL's best interest, it's still going on.
The AFL's trying to cover it up. It's like Martin Flanagan's like a climate scientist going, this is bad. We're doing this, and the AFL's going, no, it's all
Don't
fake news.
To him.
All fake news.
So they've got a team working on this at the AFL. It's that's what you want. A committee. Now, everything good comes from a committee.
Yep.
They're looking at potentially putting a Tasmanian team in the. Now you can call this the Northeastern AFL,
Northeastern Australia,
or the NEAFL, or the NEAFL.
NEAFL's good.
So I've had. Do you know what confused me is I'm not from New South Wales or Queensland. So once I said, I can't remember if I said NEAFL or NEAFL. I said one of them.
Right.
And that day, I got the podcast goes out, and that day I get 2 emails correcting me, but both in opposite directions. So to this day, I've never been more confused. I think they say NEAFL, but I'm not 100% sure because I got corrected.
Both ways?
I've been corrected both ways because I said I didn't know what it was.
People don't agree on the internet? That's weird.
Yeah, weird, huh? I think
democracy
I actually think it was the emails were from the same person who's just messing with me, which I actually really respect.
So we're going to put Tasmania, the southernest state in Australia, in the Northern League.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
This is good.
The other thing they're looking at doing is potentially they're looking at how to increase the pathways for talented players in Tasmania. Now, the first thing is they need to have somewhere to play.
That would help.
Both talented and not talented, just to start to find out which ones are. They're also looking at the future of the Tasmanian State League, which has only been in its current form since 2009 because they have had problems with that over the years.
Okay. Who's your Tassie team in the Tassie League?
I hate everyone but Melbourne, and I hate Melbourne the most. That's basically the way that's my hierarchy of. You can't have a second team,
can't you?
I don't think so.
Well, no, but you can have teams in other state leagues.
Yeah, it's too
hard for you.
It's a lot of effort. I mean, God, can you imagine me Melbourne destroy any happiness I have, and then I pick another team? What's the odds of them going to be horrendous?
Yeah, pretty high with you.
Pretty high.
Yeah.
So they're also looking at whether they get rid of the TSL and go back to North and Southern leagues. There's talk about putting the Tassie Mariners back into the TAC Cup.
Now, Tassie Mariners were an under-18 side.
1995 to 2002.
Okay, yeah. Well, at least they've answered one of the questions that I've always had with the Tasmanian team. Do you base it out of Hobart? Do you base it out of Launceston? Or do you just call it Tasmania? But if you call it Tasmania, that nullifies state of origin. So Tassie is just a nice kind of...
That's the way you reckon?
Simple one. But Mariners isn't a great name. That's a bit
What would you call it?
I don't know. You can't call them the Devils because that's too much like demons. You can't.
And you also had the
Tigers.
Devils weren't they the Devils in the NBL?
In the NBL,
yeah.
So what are you going to... Dolphins?
The Apples?
The Apples, the Dolphins,
Well,
how inappropriate can we be here?
Well, everyone says the maps.
Yeah, the maps. The cartographers.
But everyone says that. Yeah, cartographers is cleverer. Everyone says that every single time this comes up.
Yeah.
So I'm always worried about taking what's the most popular on the internet. I do like the BBL franchise, the Hurricanes.
Yeah, which don't
mainly
exist
the
down
Hobart Hurricanes, because one, Hurricanes are in the northern hemisphere, and two, you don't really look at wind-related climatic
but it's an
crises.
alliteration, so they could go Tassie tornadoes.
They should just both be related to things. That's right. We should just name any Tasmanian team over things that don't happen there.
Oh,
like the Tasmanian nightlife.
Ah, damn it!
I could see your mind working. I thought I better get this. This is too obvious a joke.
This is the worst.
Now, the AFL said in this article, one of the considerations is the cost ramifications of fielding a team in this competition, which I almost fell off my chair, because if you're listening in Tasmania, you say, really? That's, you're given how many tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to Greater Western Sydney, and you suddenly now you're counting your pennies. Suddenly now you're going, it might cost too much.
Yeah, and the Tassie government have given a lot of cash to North Melbourne and Hawthorn to play down there.
That's right. So I find it bizarre that we can't find some money, especially on the talent pathways alone.
Why are we putting them in the VFL? Just so I know, I'm going back to the geography here.
I don't understand any of what they're doing.
God.
I don't understand any of it. It's just bewildering to me. And I think they play up. I think Tasmania's divisions have caused them enough problems, but I think the AFL also play that up massively as an excuse of why they're not doing anything.
Yeah, look at you fighting over there.
Yeah, you're fighting over there. We're just doing it. It's all your fault. And then you kind of go, I don't know. Like, if you put some more money in and just said, people tend to really swing around if you give them some money. It's amazing how the gentle persuader that just pure cash can be. Now, a story I know that you have been massively following.
Is this the cricket?
and have huge opinions that the audience is very keen to hear.
We'll do your deal, Titus. You can just talk about this by yourself, and then I'll talk about A-League, and you don't have to join in that conversation. This is why we need Francis. He at least watches all of it.
Justin Langer got announced yesterday by the West Australian newspaper as being named the new replacement for Darren Lehman.
There we go. Congrats, Justin.
Only for the Cricket Australia to come out. They announced he'd be the new coach of the Australian cricket team. Only for the Cricket Australia to come out and deny this. What is it with Perth media? Last year we had the Nat 5's definitely going to St Kilda. Now he's definitely going to be.
They've always been a bit interesting. I was in rural...
Is it the time difference?
It's the time difference, and also they just love a big headline that goes against what the rest of Australia is saying. I was in regional West Australia. I think it was Kalgoorlie or no, it was up the top near Port Hedland. What's that town that's up? Anyway,
Broome?
It's sort of near Broome, but it's bollocks. I can't remember it. But
Bollocks.
I was Bollocks, West Australia. I was there, and when Rudd did the apology. So this is like early 2008,
right?
And
you weren't there in relation to the apology. Like they said, get Danny McGinley as far away from Canberra.
But I watched it, and then I went
as
online.
As humanly possible.
I went online and looked at all the headlines, and the Age is saying, what a historic day, and the Herald Sun saying, Rudd apologises, and I walked past in the West Australian headline, Rudd opens door for Abo Compo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Gee, that seems a slightly missing the mood of the moment.
Yeah, but in rural West Australia,
that really played
sold
to
like hotcakes.
See, sometimes you get some news.
Karatha, that's where I was.
Right. Just threw Karatha under the bus.
Yeah. Very good restaurants there, lovely crowds. But yeah, your journalism needs work.
Well, my favourite headline ever in another city that I've ever seen was when I was in, and it's the NT News.
They're the best.
They're always the best. But this one was not necessarily. The government had made an announcement that I think they said they'd never ban fishing and drinking while you're fishing, boozing while you're fishing. So it's a picture of a guy in a tinny drinking with a bunch of cans around his feet, fishing, drinking a beer, cans all around the bottom of the boat. And the headline was, "We will never ban this." And I was just, this is so great.
Got to have tinnies in the tinny.
Like, I love the priorities. Like, everywhere else is a nanny state, and here it's like, we will never, no matter what happens.
Do Territorians eat all the fish they catch? Have they got a high seafood diet?
Yeah,
Are they very healthy because of that?
Or
does all the drinking and smoking...
They eat all that fish, but the drinking, smoking, boozing, everything really, really offsets
a lot of it out.
It's a fun town, Darrell.
Yeah,
I spent a bit of time up there. So Justin Langer remains the front runner. If we get back after a rather...
Right, so Justin Langer is maybe the coach.
I do laugh
not David Warner.
Because they've handled the whole ball tampering saga, as I like to call it, so poorly. And then even their announcement of the next coach has already been stuffed. Now, I don't know if it's really their fault, this one. It's the paper going early, but it's just a constant, like, they can't take a trick at the moment, like everything they do.
Yeah, remember we won the Ashes 3-1? That was only a couple of months ago.
That was only against England, though.
That's true. We need a stronger opponent in the Ashes.
Yeah, that's right.
So when is the next Test series? What are the cricket fans excited for now?
It's like, I think it's Sri Lanka or something. We've got a minor one, and then we've got some other important ones. So we're missing...
A Sri Lanka minor? I thought they were good.
Well, compared to some, like India and England, are obviously the ones that make you all the money.
Yeah.
So I think, and then we miss some other ones, like, and I think we get most of them back for the next Ashes, like Smith and...
Yeah, when's that's next year, is it? Mid-next year?
So they've timed that nicely. It's interesting, the other people that are apparently in the race for it, David Saker, who's an assistant coach currently, and Brad Haddon, are both assistant coaches and could be contenders. Ricky Ponting's been talked about as having a role in some regard, but might be seen as not have done enough coaching, and there's talk he might be involved in the T20 side. So we'll find out on Friday. The Cricket Australia board meeting's on Friday, and potentially... high performance manager Pat Howard might get permission to appoint his preferred candidate, which anyone who knows Pat Howard, the fact that sentence as a whole, the fact that it's got high performance in it at all, in a non-ironic sense, and also the idea that he could put in his preferred candidate when these are the people,
himself?
Him and Sutherland are the two that created all the mess of the past that we've just gone through, and we're saying... Take the wheel again, boys, and appoint someone else. Like, it is just breathtaking to me that can happen. Do you know, if this was any other industry, you don't just go, oh, these people who drove this business off the cliff, we'll get them to appoint the next person to run it.
No, it does seem to happen a fair bit.
Sport's amazing.
In sport,
it's amazing. It's the industry to get into.
It's like those English Premier League managers who just barely get their team out of relegation zone, and then they get sacked, and then another club goes, well, they're the one for us.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think all jobs are like this, though. Like, I look around, whether it's the media, and I look around, the amount of just recycling of the same people. People don't like to appoint someone unless they've done it somewhere else.
Yeah.
They feel very comfortable going, well...
He may have done it badly, but it could have been a bad
They were
day.
horrendous at their job at another place, but they've done the job, rather than someone who hasn't done the job but could be okay. And that's where...
Titus and I are saying, why aren't we chief executives of
the Cricket
Australia?
Why am I not being sounded out for this?
Yeah.
So that could be interesting. Now, we should also talk about the A-League finals.
The finals are on first week.
They do such a wonderful job of marketing the Football Federation. Seriously, you and I are both. I'm a Victory member from day one.
Yep, and I actually go to games.
And you're in the. And you've been around a Victory fan since the start. So you and I actually like this sport, but I have to say,
it seems.
So I always get accused of, well, you like AFL. I'm like, I do like AFL, but I also like football. Like, I like any sport because it's an excuse not to talk to people, right? And I just cannot believe how much it's fallen off a cliff. Because I sort of while I'm into it, I also, because I like all sports, I'm kind of closer to the casual fan than you are.
Yeah.
So I'll go fairly regularly when I can, but also I'll pay attention and stuff. But I used to never not at least watch it on TV every week in, week out, if not, and often go.
Yep.
And I've just been, and followed it in the news, I've just been shocked at how much it's just in the last 2-3 years just fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, it's especially when AFL and NRL kick off, their marketing plan seems to be roll over and play dead. Because that's when the Asian Champions League happens. And the average muggle doesn't even know they exist. Because I know it's partly a timing,
but how often has it happened that people, like, the launch of the season almost goes unnoticed?
Of A-League?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I think it's pretty strong around them because you've just had the other codes grand finals. And they're usually quite... But what they do that's wrong is they always put big blockbusters in round one of A-League and they're crap. So, like, they'll play Melbourne v Sydney. Yeah. And first games, teams are still finding their feet. It's usually a nil or draw or 1-0. Yeah. And then for the casual fan, they go, all right, well, footy's finished, so I'll watch this soccer. And then they go, no, this is boring. If they, played a few, not rivalries at that point, and then had, Melbourne v Sydney round 3, then, then it's a 5-4
to a few things, and
that would help. But the finals are on, and that's exciting. We've got Melbourne City v Brisbane on Friday.
So that's this Friday.
That's this Friday at Bubble Dome, and Victory v Adelaide, the original rivalry, at Sunday at 6 o'clock. You could see that, and if it doesn't go to extra time, you can come to my show afterwards at 8.
So who are the people, for the people who are of a podcast, which is probably a lot who don't pay any attention to A-League, who are the best teams this year?
Sydney still, and that's been a problem with A-League.
Because they've been so good.
They've been dominant for 2-3 years now.
And their fans still don't show up even though they win all the time.
Yeah, I know. It's shocking, isn't it? If the Wanderers were this good, they would be selling out that stadium every week.
Well, the Wanderers sacked their manager today.
They did, Joseph Gombau.
After 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a different style of play, and he's apparently an acquired taste. But I like Joseph; he's a real character within the game. And I think they're getting Popovic back because he went to Turkey and it didn't work out.
Found out it was in Turkey.
Yeah, he only lasted 9 matches in Turkey, and then the club
the Victory have recovered because they started pretty poorly.
Yeah, they're doing all right, but I'd still would like.
Who's your
more.
tip for this weekend?
I want to tip Victory, obviously, because I'm always passionate about my own team.
Right.
City and Brisbane. That'll be better than people think. I mean,
she's really selling.
Yeah, I know. It's shocking, isn't it?
After my little rant about how it's not sold properly, you're going, that'll be better than people think.
I think if the City fan really gets behind them, then that could be an absolute.
Do you think
coliseum.
Better than people think could be their tagline for the A-League next year? Is that if we get you in to do some marketing?
Yep.
There's still the greatest moment in the A-League is the 2 sauce bottles getting into a fight with the fans. Remember the barbecue sauce and the tomato sauce?
Gosford in
Central
Coast.
On the Central Coast, they're dressed up mascots of the barbecue sauce, Master Foods barbecue sauce and tomato sauce bottles that went on I think it was barbecue sauce, started giving the finger to all the visiting players, and Masterfoods had to issue a statement that said it's not synonymous with their values. It's one of the great moments of sport this year, and it's definitely the one highlight that I saw on the front pages of or the front of the website.
Did he get
various news
the mascot?
Yeah, I think so.
Because Mr. Met for the New York Mets got in trouble for doing that as well. I think
there's a lot of mascots. When you read up on mascots, there's a lot of mascots that do some really quite horrendous things and get sacked.
Do you know this about me? I was a mascot for a while.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this briefly, didn't you?
Yeah, I was a mascot for hire, so I wasn't always one person, but I did promotions, and one of the things is, hey, do you want to get paid double and you have to wear this horrible suit? And I was like, hell yeah. So I was, during Grand Final Week 2010, I was both the St Kilda State and the Collingwood Magpie. Just going to events because the guys who normally do them had not been booked, and I think they were going on holiday. They went around,
right?
Yeah, so I did all of their events. Yeah, and there's really not much you can do. You can give the finger. That's one way to express it, because you can't talk. You can't. You've only got a certain amount of body movement. So if you're trying to express yourself,
how horrible is it in those suits?
It's not that bad. There's really strict rules with breaks, so you tend to work 20 minutes. You get 20 minutes off. So it's like being a FIFO worker, except just in minutes.
So you were the Saints and the
Magpie. I would go be a Saint for 20 minutes, have 15, 20 minutes off while I put the other suit on, then go out and talk to the different fans. And it was hilarious.
It's just kids, basically,
it's
mainly.
Kids, and what's hilarious is, one kid comes out, you're dressed as a magpie. Oh, I love you, go Collingwood. And you're going, yeah, I hate you. But then you come back, you put the other suit on, they come out, oh, you suck, and you want to scream, it's me again, dickhead. But, well.
Then you can't say that, apparently.
No, well, you're not allowed to talk. It's actually, I don't remember my rules. But Sydney and Newcastle will play the winners of those matches, and then the grand final will be Sydney and either Newcastle or Melbourne, and Sydney will win again, sadly. So that's another reason why it's gone so badly. Anyway, move on.
Just hate Sydney.
Yeah, I do.
Round 5's coming up, Danny. It's now the interesting thing about round 5 is it's going to go for 6 days.
That's so like an NRL round.
It starts on Friday and it goes to Wednesday because of Anzac Day.
With Monday off, which is a disgrace. I can't have a gap. What is this?
So it's this. And then I noticed that they don't really get a break the week after.
No, they both play on Sunday.
So,
of course, the Tigers get the benefit of that, which is...
Well, it's amazing because how would you say yes to that? I mean, I know they get the blockbuster, but are they just... I should have checked, but are they just not doing bye rounds at all? Like, couldn't you give them their bye this...
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Make more sense.
Yeah.
They just won't train, I imagine.
They'll just
in
recover.
Between. They'll just do recovery the whole time.
Yeah.
But it's a big ask. It's a big ask to come off. So Friday night, that means we've got on Friday night, Sydney and Adelaide are playing up in Sydney. Now, the thing that's amazing about this is it's a Friday night and we have 2 non-Victorian teams playing.
What a disgrace.
That must not...
Sack the AFL.
Has the AFL just missed that? I think because they've given all the blockbuster Anzac Day games to the Victorian clubs. Yeah. But still, how do we dodge... Carlton bullet.
Yeah, surely Carlton deserve another Friday night match. I mean, it's not Friday. Thank God it's Friday. I'm going to read angry Carlton fans on social media. That's how I unwind. Fish and chips and Carlton.
The amount of Carlton games in prime time is just...
It's amazing. They lose all of them. So it's actually very bad for Carlton's brand.
Yeah, the club should not be... They should be... Well, they're buried in twilight on the Saturday, I noticed. So that's when every Carlton match should be played, in twilight on pay-per-view. It's the one... everyone's really angry about certain sports going behind the paywall on Foxtel, basically.
Yeah, the cricket ones.
The cricket especially. I've never heard anyone complain about that with Carlton. In fact, I think some people are petitioning the government to just make the exception in the anti-siphoning laws for Carlton games that they have to be behind pay TV. If not, we should actually set up a change.org petition.
All Carlton games on pay TV. And you have to pay double.
Twilight.
Twilight on a Tuesday.
So Sydney Adelaide, that should be
Swans should win. Adelaide are so bad.
Adelaide last year
they've got a runners-up hangover.
Yeah, last year Adelaide had 2 games where they went down to Tasmania. I think it was around 7 and 8 last year. They went down to Tassie. They got smashed by North, right? And they were down by like 70 points in the first half or something ridiculous. And everyone's like, what's going on? And then Melbourne flew over and played them in Adelaide the following week and beat them there too. So, but they've then bounced back to get to the grand final where they phoned it in again. So they've got this ability to both put in real shockers.
It's proper Jekyll and Hyde.
And then come back and be back to one of the best sides. And I was thinking about this because when you look at Richmond had that a few times last year where they just, remember they blew a few games?
Yeah.
In that St Kilda game. You had Melbourne against Hawthorn and last week. And the reaction is, and often you can be right, like I'm not saying, that means you're a terrible team. But it seems to even happen to good teams at the moment. It doesn't necessarily write you off for the year. Richmond had that game, still won the premiership. Adelaide had 2, still got to the grand final.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that necessarily means it might be wishful thinking. I think Melbourne can bounce back or not, whether that was an anomaly. But it does seem to be happening at the moment.
It's the equalisation, the any given Sunday
if you don't show up and the other team does, like if you're not mentally switched on, no matter how good you are, you can get belted these days. So I'm not sure whether I write Adelaide off completely or just put that down like some of their others of this is just they do this occasionally.
Do you reckon this is why there's so many blowouts now, in that some teams can realise, we can lose a game and it's not going to affect our season too much. So if you're down by 7 goals in the second quarter, you go, all right, well, we'll just write this game off. And
I don't know, like it is weird. I think the bottom line, it was interesting. Peter Jackson was interviewed about the Melbourne abomination last week. And he said, no one actually really knows why they do it. And I think there's sort of truth in this in sport. We all pretend that there's some, like people have written all these things about. I think there can be tactical reasons. I think there can be a bunch of reasons. But it seems that sometimes footballers or teams just all get into like they're either red hot and all on, or they can sometimes all be just horrendous, like they've never played football before.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether Adelaide, but losing to Collingwood in Adelaide.
Oh man,
like
what the hell was that?
And then Sloane's apparently.
And let's also give a shout out. Banner of the year, Collingwood.
Collingwood, where they spelled every word wrong.
Spelled every word wrong. That's exactly what you need to do.
Yeah, laugh at yourself, not take it too seriously.
Exactly.
That was the best.
I've always said a banner is a good barometer of where the club's at, and clearly Collingwood are allowing themselves to have fun with it, and that's when you win footy games.
I think you're a bit biased, but go ahead.
Of course. Yeah,
are you getting other offers from other? Because I got to say, the Bulldogs banner's like now gone off the cliff.
Well, I promised the club I wouldn't snipe, right. So I'm not going to...
No, you haven't said anything to me off air. This is my own personal opinion.
We don't talk off air.
Well, I try and talk to you, but you just sit there in silence until you see the mics on. It's weird. It's really weird. So
like Leno and Woodley at the end of their run.
So Sydney... I think going to win that too. I think so. In fact, Rory Sloane's probably also injured and is very likely not to play.
Oh, is he?
He's got a foot injury he's been managing, but I think they might rest him. So I think at the SCG, Sydney should be all right there. St Kilda play GWS. This game's been set up to just make St Kilda fans even more miserable.
Yeah, and I think I do this every week, but just if you are a St Kilda supporter, Lifeline is 13 11 13.
Lifeline have told me to tell you to stop telling people to call them.
Stop associating themselves with St Kilda.
St Kilda.
I think I'm giving the number out wrong as well.
It's ruining their brand.
I might be...
Yeah, you've been giving out a Pizza Hut's number. Their sales have gone through the roof. I can't... Well, it's at Etihad Stadium. I mean, at some point, GWS, I got to say, have looked poor at times this year.
Because every side has.
Although one of them was against Collingwood and everyone thought that was terrible, but then Collingwood have since shown that maybe not as bad as everyone thought. So we can't really... read much into that.
And they lost to Sydney, but that was Sydney at their absolute best.
Yeah, and they only just lost. It was pretty close. So I think they should be... St Kilda just, to me, just lost all confidence as well as ability to play football.
Yeah, why did they say they were going to... People thought... I don't know if they said they were going to make top 4 or anything, but... Why did you think that? There was no... They were okay, but if I was a Saints fan watching last year, I go, well, if everything goes right, we might make the top 8.
Yeah.
But
they were talent on paper never means anything.
No.
Because it assumes that all improvement is sort of linear. So, like, you come in as a good 20-year-old and therefore at 25 you're going to be like, percentages better. When often players come in and just stagnate.
Yeah.
Or have a great first and second year and then lose their way.
First year you rely on talent, then you have to rely on hard work.
And as you get older, people figure you out or they start to tag you and all this sort of stuff. So we kind of as fans sort of think, like people say to me, they say this about Melbourne home, you're on the rise, and you're like, maybe, but you got to do it on the field. Like the fact that everyone thinks you're on the rise doesn't mean anything. I mean, how long have Carlton been coming for? They know we're coming.
Can you smell remember that? Can you smell what the Blues are cooking?
Yeah.
Well, clearly it's like pulled pork because it's taking a long time. And you just said one of my favourite phrases that, on paper, there's these teams are good. Me and my mates had a running joke a few years ago where if anyone said the phrase on paper, you could, it was within the rules of the game that you could poke them in the neck very hard and just say, but the game's not played on paper.
Carlton play West Coast at the MCG once again, 4:35 start, so perfect time to not watch it.
It's on the Russian channel on Foxtel.
It's Channel 31 still around. It's on community TV.
It's on the analog Channel 31.
Yeah, that's broadcast. Right. They've rebooted it up. Carlton, West Coast basically are taking on their traditional rival, the MCG, and that's the only thing I can see this being any trouble.
It's a very good joke. Very good.
Thanks. That's the only thing I can really see Carlton maybe getting up here. They haven't won yet at all.
No.
Their list is incredibly young.
Yeah, but not the youngest.
Yeah, but the thing that all the key position players are all like 14. It's amazing.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, I think we've talked about Carlton a fair bit.
We have the last two. We've ripped shreds off them, but it is so much fun.
I think we can all fully admit I don't care about Carlton. So Eagles will win that.
I think the Eagles will win, but you never know about them on the MCG. Port and on paper,
let's do it.
Port Adelaide, Geelong. Now, this is a good game.
No, it's not. Geelong are so much worse than people think they are. They have put all their eggs in one basket. They beat you because Max Gawn missed that goal.
Well, but at the same time, they did come back into that match and
against you guys. All they've beaten is St Kilda.
Point taken.
And they've lost to they played well against Hawthorn but couldn't pull it off. Who else did they lost to? They lost to what was the other one? I've got to come on, app. Lost to West Coast when they called themselves back and then gave up. Yeah, no, that's.
But I'll say this about Geelong, right? I'll say this about Geelong. The one reason I'm not, I agree. The evidence so far has them not as good as everyone in their mind thinks. But I thought that about them last year, and they seem to always just get things back on track, Geelong. So I'm not writing them off yet.
Yeah, there's a group of irritating clubs. Geelong Hawthorn would be the leaders of this, of consistently irritatingly good.
Well, you often think, Geelong have lost it, and then how long have they been predicted? I mean, they're not saying they're winning grand finals every year, but they're usually thereabouts. They do, and so I'm not ready yet to suddenly say.
And Port were terrible against the Bombers.
I know, but Port had won, and I don't look. It's too early to know if Port are pretenders again, or actually with their new recruits and a few other things actually playing very well. But what I would say is they won their first three. They then go over and play Essendon at Etihad, so they're away from home. Essendon have just been belted and are not not as bad as as that performance showed. So they're always going to regress to the mean, as they say. They were going to weren't going to be as. They were going to come back to the average of what they usually play.
Yeah, and Essendon would have beat the Bulldogs, but for some reason their game plan was kick it to Toby McLean.
Well, the Essendon even almost by playing and everyone said this, one of the most horrendous games in years, and Warswold said it was his worst in his time.
And they made it exciting.
Almost came back. So I just don't think. I'm not saying I think Essendon are premiership material or anything, but I don't think they're that bad. So I always saw that Port game as a danger game for Port. Winning three in a row, they're on the road at Etihad, and Essendon
are wounded.
We're going to come and give it their all. I thought it was always a danger. So I'm not writing Port off straight away. I think Ryder being injured is their biggest problem, but I don't know. I think the thing about this, to what we're talking about, though, is we don't know if either of these sides are the real deal or not. This game would be interesting.
Yeah, Port are and Geelong aren't.
Right,
I've said it.
I'm going to edit this out and keep it to the end of the year.
Oh man, I've just signed Geelong's premiership.
Yeah. I know when, but I just think this game's going to be really interesting because I kind of see this as whoever wins this is their record. Port's going to go to 4-1.
Yeah.
Or they'll end up 3-2.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference to that. And for Geelong, they lose this. They're suddenly looking. What are they? 2-3. I think they'd become. They're suddenly looking pretty. 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
2 and 3. So that's where I sort of look at it and go. I could see that going either way and being either. So that's why I think it's an important game. Freo Bulldogs over in Perth.
Yeah.
I'll hand this to you because your Dogs have shown up 2 weeks in a row. So that's nice.
Well. Yeah. And
but you did lose last. You did actually lose last week. I checked after the way Bulldogs fans were talking to me, and I said, "Well, hang on. You guys know you lost, right?"
Yeah. Can I take up?
And they were like, "We just thought we were going to be doing, so we were going to get belted."
And then we weren't. That's really... And we've gone back to the Footscray of old.
You got a Footscray of old.
We lost by less than we thought.
That's like, Melbourne celebrating beating North after 17 tries. Can
I take umbrage with you? I read your knee-jerk reaction and it was quite positive about the Sydney Bulldogs game.
It wasn't... Well, I mean, after
it wasn't a great... It was an exciting game, but skills-wise...
Hang on. Did you watch the rest of the round? Compared to the rest... That's what I was saying. Compared to the rest of the round... It was, it was like serving, premium grade beef in a Etihad Stadium cafe.
Are you saying North beating Carlton by 86 points wasn't a good game?
It was funny.
It was funny. It wasn't. So, yeah, that's like saying,
That night I just put that on, the replay of that on instead of my show. And I got the best reviews of my run.
So Freo Dogs, I've genuinely no idea who's going to win that. So I've tipped the Dogs, of course.
Oh.
A few of the Dogs players have been coming to my festival show.
Oh, sorry, you just dropped a name there on the ground.
It was more a vague description, but...
intentionally? Or to take umbrage with something you've said?
Yeah, they come down. Cease and desist.
Yeah. A couple of the Bulldogs players... Lawyers.
They've come down. I've asked them how they're feeling about the week, and they're saying, "Yeah, we're pretty positive."
What are they going to say to you? Oh, I reckon it's over.
Yeah, I hope so.
So to be honest, Danny, I don't like our chances.
Oh, mate, we're going to tank because we're going to tank against Freo the way we did in 16, and then go to win the grand final. But this particular week, we're going to lose. The Dogs will win. Undefeated at Optus Stadium.
I'm tipping Freo here.
How dare you?
Well, I just think at home, and I don't know, I'm still not sure you guys have fully turned the corner.
Yeah, we've given ourselves hope for 2 weeks, so it's time to have another heartbreak.
Yeah, look, you've gone from playing some of the worst footy we've seen you play in years to playing 2
okay games.
Pretty decent. Like, you tried.
Yeah.
And so I'm not ready to suddenly, But you guys obviously have the nucleus of something that's a premiership side.
Oh, yeah, and we're the youngest side in the AFL by 3,000 days or soming. And it's, no, I must have that wrong. 3,000 days.
A million, you must have said
a million hours.
A million days. Just make it over the top.
We're still the
billion light years younger than everyone else.
We're building.
Sunday's North Melbourne versus Hawthorn.
Yeah, now my wife isn't
Stadium
pregnant, but I'm thinking of trying to get her pregnant just so I can miss this match.
Hawthorn are scarily, I don't know whether that just spooked me.
Irritatingly good.
Guys, they're rebuilding.
Yeah, well.
They're
piss off, Clarkson. Go retire on an island. You're already one of the greats.
I know.
Stop.
I'm just, every day I pray that Kennett and him will fall out. Anyway, I'm worried though that Kennett would then leave. I'm tipping Hawthorn for that. But North, you got to say, they've belted the terrible teams. Yeah, I don't know. North, what can you say? They're probably better than we thought. I think they're 7th on the ladder or something, but it's very early days.
Yeah, they are 7th.
So they're set 2 and 2.
Yeah, sorry, played 4-1-2.
Yeah, 2 and 2. So I think they're good, but I think they're okay. They're not where they sit is they're not as absolutely horrendous as a lot of people thought.
Yeah, and they've got some great players in there. Like Sean Higgins is a great player.
And Ben Brown, if he was somewhere else,
oh man,
everyone's talking about getting Tom Lynch, and of course, yes, but I mean, if you desperately need a key forward and you were wanting to bring someone to your team, he'd be a target.
I'd rather have Ben Brown than Tom Lynch.
What are you smoking? What's in that glass? Is that just
Ben Brown?
He's
He's awesome.
I think Ben Brown's terrific, but I don't know. I think Tom Lynch is a better player.
So, all right, why don't you marry him?
I've asked. He was not open to it. That Sunday also gives us, because we must have done something wrong, Brisbane versus Gold Coast.
The Q Clash. Oh, no. Someone told me on Twitter what they call it. It's something like the...
It's not the Q Clash anymore? Have they changed it?
Oh, it's something like the Derby up here or something. It rhymed. It was really good. I can't remember it.
But that's not the official name. That's just what someone else fans call it.
It was a way better name.
Great.
But yeah, do you know
what's wouldn't it have been great if you could remember what that was?
It would have been so good. You got people, the listeners...
Listeners, just imagine you said something really funny then. Hey, I heard a great joke. Can't remember it, but was it good. But
imagine. This is like guided meditation. You are listening to a podcast. It's entertaining. Hey, do you know what's weird? Brisbane are the favourites, according to the betting odds on the tipping site I went to.
Are you right?
That's
After
so
last
weird.
Week's performance.
Yeah, they've yet to win a game, and the Suns have done some good things.
And last week against Richmond, I mean, I know it was against Richmond, but 17 points in a whole game.
So we don't... I'm not a gambler, but
I think
maybe
this
I will.
is going to be... This will be uglier than the Banking Royal Commission. That's how bad it will be. It'll be like painful to watch.
And more dull.
Yeah.
Lower ratings.
Yeah, it is. And if you buy a ticket from it, you are being scammed. Do not buy a ticket to this.
What's a ticket a go-go that don't buy tickets from there? Oh, are they a scam site? No, just don't go.
I mean, 17 points. How does a team that all they train for is this sport score 17 points?
Hasn't the media gone quiet on Clarkson's, he's so good at training up the next generation of coaches with Fagan and Bolton.
Yeah, but he has
stuck on the bottom of the
ladder. He's had a few others and Hardwick.
But that narrative seems to have stopped just temporarily.
I know, but you kind of look at, Fagan has got such a big job ahead of him, and in ways too, Bolton is the same because... Yeah, we've talked about Carlton enough. I'm worried about Carlton fans. Carlton. No, but it's just, I think Bolton and they've both been handed. I mean, the one thing I found interesting what Brendan Gale said about, I think it's in Conrad Marshall's book, about why they kept with Hardwick when everyone, including myself, thought they shouldn't, is they said you got to remember what he inherited was so bad.
Yeah.
I think he's like a pile of crap or something, that's what, and I think that's the thing with these guys. Like, do you do what Carlton always do, or do you do it up in Brisbane where you go, right, you've had 3 years and you haven't turned a team that is barely an AFL team into a perennial superstar.
You haven't turned this Billy card into a Ferrari. What's with you?
And you've had a whole 3 years, and you kind of go, I think it's a bit...
And if you don't think that matters, listeners, look at we've actually got the perfect scientific example. And you look at the Scott brothers. Chris Scott got handed a Porsche, and he drove it to a premiership, and Brad Scott got given a Datsun 120Y, and is yet to have success.
But he still almost got it. He got it pretty far, actually. Like, I'm in two minds on. I can't decide whether Brad's a terrible coach or an amazing coach because, and that's always the thing that you don't know a bit is like what they've got. I mean, you look at
those boys gonna do the Parent Trap just for a week.
I think it's been done watching some of those matches. Tuesday, which is the Anzac Day Eve clash, Melbourne versus Richmond. Isn't it great to see footy slowly taking over Anzac Day? I actually learnt that Anzac Day is not actually to commemorate football.
What?
It's actually to do with remembering, the servicemen and women who have passed in.
But the Z stands for Zanotti, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So, but football's just slowly taking it over, and it's not something I'm actually a huge fan of.
What, Anzac Day or football
I want to still live in Australia, so I'm not going to say Anzac Day I'm not a fan of because that's where you get. I've learned that you get deported if you point out anything about Anzac Day, including facts. But when I look at Anzac Day, I think. Look, one game of footy you could maybe have made the argument for, but it just feels a bit like it's like suddenly it's the eve and suddenly there's some interstate teams. I can understand why the non-Victorian teams are saying, well, why do all the Melbourne teams get the blockbuster Anzac Day and all the others? So I've heard them start to say, well, why isn't that expanded out to allow us?
That's a good point.
And I get their point, but there's a point where you go, well, is this what Anzac Day is really about? Like, the whole point of Anzac Day is its reflection of what's happened, not be entertained by the footy.
Yeah.
And go, oh, it's great the last post before the match, but...
Yeah, and it was because it was a terrible massacre that we're not celebrating, we're acknowledging. So why not just replay the Richmond-Brisbane game?
You're right. It should be North St Kilda playing this instead of Good Friday.
Because that was akin to Jesus suffering for our sins.
So I do feel a little bit like, I mean, look, from a Melbourne sports point of view, great, we've got a blockbuster and it's a very popular one, and people say it's very moving.
And you got to keep it. Bulldogs had Good Friday for 1 year.
But I also look at it a bit and go, I don't like the creeping amount of sport that is dominating it a little bit.
Yeah, and it is the over the top. Let's keep military and sport a little bit separate because it is diminishing what the military. These guys lost their lives for it. So.
Yeah, that's right. It's not as the comparisons that inevitably get made.
Yeah.
Although I think the media's become slightly better at not saying that. The commentators used to do that a lot more.
Yeah.
Melbourne have this is a big moment for Melbourne because if they rebound and beat Richmond, everyone will suddenly go, well, that was an anomaly and they're back and they've figured out their demons. But, I mean, Richmond were good against the Lions and Melbourne struggled against the Lions. So it's I don't know, like they could just as likely go into this mentally already defeated.
Yeah,
after last week.
Tigers are their premiership I think their premiership hangover's yet to really kick in, which is annoying me.
Yeah, I think they've been
this time last year the Dogs had only lost one game as well, so there's still hope.
So I don't know. Like once again, I don't want to overreact to one game, but it did feel a bit like the same old demons last week.
Yeah, I think Tigers will win, but maybe you'll have like a Bulldog Swans moment where you don't lose by as much as you think, and you'll be really happy.
Oh, dare to dream. Thanks, Danny.
Here for you,
Wednesday we get the actual Collingwood-Essendon blockbuster.
Yep.
At the MCG. Suddenly. This year, it doesn't feel like this. A few times this has looked like one of the worst games on paper.
Yeah, this will be a bit, but the games are played on paper. But yeah, they're both not as bad as they've been in previous years, but it's still, as a supporter of a smaller club, I would love to see other teams. I would love it to be a rotating thing, like, Collingwood, Essendon 1 year, and then have the derby over in Perth on Anzac Day, and then have the showdown on, make it always a big, exciting event.
Yeah.
But I think their monopoly should probably end soon because it's, people say it's tradition. It's a 23-year-old tradition. It's not a tradition.
Yeah. And it's just because it's Collingwood and two massive Victorian
they don't need
sides.
the money and the exposure. So let's help out.
I can't wait till it's the Q. So you're saying really it should be the Q clash?
It should be, yes.
Why do you hate the Diggers? If you're suggesting that. That's shocking.
Yeah, I'm a bad person. Sorry, everyone.
You're going to be in trouble. All right, well, thanks, Danny.
If you want to send complaints to my un-Australian views, my Twitter handle is @CharliePick.
So we've both got 4 more shows in Melbourne. Then we're both up in Sydney, so I'd love to see people who are listening in Sydney if they'd like to come on, and that'd be great. And we will be back next week. Hopefully have some, which will be back next week at the end of round.
Oh yeah, we'll have a fresh knee-jerk reaction for you on Thursday.
See you all later.